We're trained to follow facts, evidence, chain of command. That's what keeps people alive out there. But that night, I saw something I still can't explain, something that wasn't on any chart or logbook. I've pulled people out of the water, off broken hulls, from rocks, you name it. But this one doesn't fit in a report. I don't tell this story often. Some things, they sound better left unsaid. But 4 people are still alive because of what happened that night off Penumbra Island. And I owe it to them to tell it right, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Name's Grace Holloway. Most folks just called me Holloway in the service. Spent 28 years with the U.S. Coast Guard out of the 1st District up in Boston. Retired 6 years ago. I was a lieutenant when I stepped off for good. I was born and raised in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Fishing town. Salt in the air, cold in the bones, and folks that don't say much unless they mean it. My father was a lobsterman, my uncles too. I grew up waking before the sun, packing bait, and learning how to read the sea just by watching the clouds roll in. But I didn't want the traps in the tide charts. I wanted something different. I was 21 when I joined the Coast Guard. That was 1991. They stuck me up north, Boston sector. From there, I worked most of the Atlantic stretch up to the border with Canada. Storm patrols, rescue operations, small craft enforcement. You name it. I saw a lot in those years. Broken boats, hypothermic kids, drunks who thought they could outrun the weather. And sometimes we didn't make it in time. Those are the ones that sit with you when it's quiet. Nights when you can hear the wind rattle your windows, and it sounds just like it did on the water. I was good at my job. I didn't take risks I couldn't justify, and I didn't chase ghosts. That's important to understand. We don't get to believe in ghosts in the Coast Guard. Not when lives are on the line. You stick to your training, your equipment, your damn compass, and it usually gets you home. But I guess that's why this story never sat right with me. After I retired, I moved inland a bit. Still in Massachusetts, but off the coast. Too many memories by the docks. Now I work part-time at a supply shop and try to keep my knees from giving out on me. People ask if I miss it, the service, and I do. But not the calls. Not the ones that came in cold, in the middle of the night, when you already knew someone wasn't going to make it. This one call, though, it didn't come in like that. It was November, 2019, right before I was planning to hang it up for good. I had some unused leave, but I stuck around to help train a new batch coming in. Younger kids, bright, cocky, good hearts. They still had the fire. Me? I was just trying to finish clean, no drama. Just one more patrol shift at a time. That week, the weather had turned ugly, not hurricane level, but nasty. The kind of cold wind that cuts through your jacket and makes your ears ring. We'd gotten 2 calls already that Monday. One capsized trawler, everyone made it, thank God, and another boat taking on water near Portland. Long days. Then came Tuesday, November 4th. I remember it because I'd just come back to base when I saw the radar. A small reading, real faint, just off Penumbra Island. That place, I hadn't thought about it in years. Just a chunk of rock off the coast of Bar Harbor. No docks, no buildings, except for the old Castor Bluff lighthouse. Shut down decades ago. I didn't say anything at first. There was no distress call, no radio chatter, just a flicker on the radar that vanished before I could log it. Most would have shrugged it off. Probably a blip. Interference. Happens all the time when the weather's that thick. But something about it made my stomach shift. I mentioned it to command. They looked into it, said there was no vessel scheduled in that area, no active beacon. They told me to get some sleep. But I didn't. I sat in that office, staring at the coordinates. Something about it felt off, like I was missing something important. And I've learned, after damn near 3 decades out there, you don't ignore your gut. I didn't know it yet, but there was a sailboat out there. 4 people on board, no power, no radio, No idea how close they were to dying. And somehow they'd make it ashore alive. But not because of us. That's what still gets me. That night changed the way I look at a lot of things. Not just the job, not just the sea, but life. And what's waiting for us when there's nothing left to count on but faith, I guess. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I do. But if you've ever looked into someone's eyes who's just come back from the edge and they tell you something that don't make sense, something impossible, and you know in your bones they're telling the truth, well, you start to wonder if maybe not everything we swear by is enough. Anyway, I'll walk you through it. Not the way it's written in the logs, the way it happened, the way I lived it. You gotta understand the kind of week it was. Early November in Maine? It ain't pretty. The tourists are gone, the leaves are already past their peak, and the wind, well, it starts cutting sideways, not sharp like a blade, more like sandpaper, gets under your skin and stays there. That cold makes your joints bark and your mood sink, especially out on the water. Now, we were watching this coastal system roll in from the southeast. Not a full-on nor'easter, but it had teeth. The kind of storm that doesn't blow you over all at once. It just wears you down, minute by minute. Rain sideways, wind gusting hard enough to slam a locker door shut. Seas topping 10, 12 feet in some spots. Not fun, not safe. That week, we were short-staffed, couple folks out sick, some younger ones still learning the ropes, and like I said, I was near the end of my time, helping out with training, running support shifts, making sure the newer folks didn't get themselves killed. I wasn't supposed to be leading any big operations anymore, but when you're there, you're there. You don't clock out of instinct just because your retirement paperwork's filed. We'd been doing mostly standard patrols around the Gulf of Maine, checking markers, maintaining buoys, responding to minor calls, engine trouble, lost kayaks, stuff like that. I remember being tired, not exhausted, just that bone-deep tired that settles in after years of going through the same checklist, same drills, same cold boots in the morning. It's not that you don't care anymore. You do. You just stop thinking about it so much. You move on autopilot. One of the kids on my team, Morales, asked me that week if I ever missed home when I was out there. I told him, "Out here is home. The land is where the noise is. Out here, you can breathe." He laughed, but I meant it. Thing about the sea, especially that part of the Atlantic, is that she's not kind, but she's honest. She don't pretend to be anything she's not. You either respect her or you pay for it. And that week, a lot of boats were paying. We had calls from Portland, Rockland, even a trawler out past Lubeck that needed a tow. That's spread out territory, and we didn't have enough crews to be everywhere at once. So command made some calls, prioritized where the risks were highest. That's just how it goes. Bar Harbor was quiet, though, or at least it seemed that way. Penumbra Island wasn't even on our radar, figuratively or literally. That chunk of rock hadn't mattered in years, no docks. No permits for anchoring, no reason to go near it unless you were lost or suicidal. The lighthouse out there, Castor Bluff, had been decommissioned since I was a teenager. Some say it was haunted, others just called it junk metal on a dead cliff. We used to joke that if your compass pointed you toward Castor Bluff, you were already beyond saving. But we all knew where it was. Every sailor from New England knows the damn outline of that place. Sharp ridge, black stone, no trees. Just fog and wind and bird shit. From a distance, it looked like it didn't want you near. And most folks listened. Still, even with the island being technically dead, it stayed in our database as a visual reference point. One of those places you mark on charts not because anyone uses it, but because if someone does end up there, it's usually bad. We had 0 calls from that area all week. No traffic, no sonar pings, no nothing. Until that flicker. And even then, it didn't scream emergency. It just twitched, like a weak muscle trying to come back to life. Before I get to that night, though, I gotta say, most people don't understand how heavily we rely on communication out there. Not just radios, The entire grid, GPS, radar, emergency transponders. You're trained to trust the tech because it's supposed to keep you from flying blind. But you also learn that when things go sideways, that tech don't mean a damn thing. That week, a lot of things started going sideways. Static on channels we'd used for years, radar glitches, boats popping on and off the screen like someone was messing with the feed. At first, we figured it was just the weather, interference from the storm surge, salt air messing with the electronics. But it wasn't just us. Even the harbor master at Mount Desert said something weird came through on his old shortwave, like a beacon ping, but garbled, off frequency. Nobody paid much attention, though. When you've got people clinging to ice-cold decks waiting to be pulled out of the water, you don't chase static. Still, it was weird. That's the thing about Maine. You don't talk about weird stuff out loud, but you notice. You clock it, you store it away. Now, I don't know how much you know about the sea up there, but it doesn't forgive mistakes. You go off course, forget your heading, misjudge a wave. It can go bad fast, especially around those islands. Rocky, shallow waters. No lights. No help, which is why it made no damn sense that a sailboat, was out near Penumbra Island in that mess. They weren't fishing. They weren't hauling cargo. They were a Boston leisure craft, the Maribel. 4 folks on board. Good weather sailors, at best, and nobody knew they were out there. They didn't check in, didn't file a float plan, didn't send out a mayday. It's like they vanished off the map and popped back up at the edge of a nightmare. We should have heard them, seen something, gotten a distress ping, anything. But all we had was a twitch on the radar, and me, sitting in the operations room, watching that flicker disappear like it had never been there. I didn't know it yet, but those 4 people had already lost power. Their instruments were dead, their batteries fried, and they were drifting blind, straight toward Penumbra. They should have died out there. They didn't. And to this day, I still don't know who or what got them to shore. But I know it wasn't us. November 4th started like most storm days. I'd come in early that morning, 0600, still dark outside, with the kind of wind that slaps your face before you even get the door open. My coat was soaked before I made it up the steps to the operations center. Coffee already cold by the time I sat down. Phones ringing. Radar humming. Everyone running on half-sleep and bad cafeteria eggs. We had a couple of boats reported overdue around Portland, but they were accounted for by noon. One of our crews helped tow in a small trawler that had lost a stabilizer. Rough, but nothing unusual. Around 1600 hours, the shift was winding down, and I remember thinking, maybe we'll get through this one clean. It was false hope, and I knew better. You don't say that kind of thing out loud. That's like daring the sea to spit in your eye. I stayed a little later, helping debrief one of the younger crew leaders. I was in the radio room when it happened. It was just a flicker. That radar screen, we had eyes on every square inch of water from the Cape up to the Canadian line. I'd looked at those screens for decades. I knew how a lobster boat looked on radar, a yacht, a barge. I knew how reflections behaved, how weather messed with signals. I could spot a bird cluster and tell you it wasn't a threat. But this one? It was wrong. Small. Faint. Stationary for maybe 30 seconds, then gone. No motion. No ID code. No emergency frequency. Just there. Then not. Now, the radar tech chalked it up to a false echo. He said we were getting splashbacks from the coastline. Those happen when the signal bounces off wet cliffs or ice spray. Happens a lot near Bar Harbor when the wind's cutting sideways. But this wasn't a bounce. I knew that right away. It looked like a vessel. Small, maybe 30 to 40 feet. Long enough to be a private sailboat. But it wasn't squawking any ID. No transponder. No AIS ping. That's not just odd. It's dangerous. Especially in that weather. I told the tech to log it. He didn't argue, but I could tell he thought I was being jumpy. I wasn't. I'd seen enough radar ghosts in my time. This wasn't one of them. I walked into the main room and told command. They looked it over, pulled the logs. The flicker hadn't lasted more than a minute. No distress call, no scheduled vessels in that sector, no SR alerts. So they flagged it, filed it, and moved on. But I couldn't shake it. I went back to my desk and pulled up the regional chart. The signal had pinged just southwest of Penumbra Island. Now that made no damn sense. Nobody goes to Penumbra, not by accident, and sure as hell not during a storm. That place is a death trap in bad weather, sharp rocks, unpredictable currents, no place to anchor. But I kept staring at it. That spot, that little speck off the island. My gut tightened. You spend long enough in this line of work, you learn to listen to that tight feeling. It's not nerves, it's memory. Every bad rescue I've ever run, that feeling came first. I sat there another 20 minutes, trying to convince myself to go home. Let it go. Let someone else chase phantoms for once. But I didn't move. Instead, I walked over to Lieutenant Juergens, my acting CO that night, and said, plain and calm, "Sir, I think we need to send someone out toward Penumbra. Just a quick sweep." He looked at me like I'd asked for a ghost hunt. No signal, no call, no beacon. "There's nothing to sweep, Holloway." I nodded, but I didn't sit down. I just stood there, quiet, not defiant, just still. He sighed and gave me the go-ahead. "Take the 45-foot, just keep it tight, check the western side and be back before 2200. I didn't wait for him to change his mind. Took a junior petty officer and a rescue swimmer. The wind was still pushing 30 knots, so we stayed close to shore, hugging the safer paths. By the time we made it out past Mount Desert, the seas were picking up hard. Felt like we were being tossed sideways every fifth wave. We were maybe 2 miles out from Penumbra when the radio started acting funny. Static, not just garbled, dead, like someone had pulled the plug. All our channels went flat at once. No weather updates, no Coast Guard frequency. Even the emergency band was silent. Then the GPS started drifting. Coordinates didn't match our heading. Compass needles twitching like they were dizzy. That's when my crew started getting nervous. "Ma'am," one of them said, "this feels wrong." He wasn't wrong, but I told him to stay focused, eyes open, boat steady. We crested a wave, and then I saw it. Just for a second. Light. Up on the ridge of the island. A beam. White, solid, rotating slow, just like a lighthouse lens. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion. That light shouldn't be there. Castor Bluff had been dead since the 80s. The tower was sealed up. No power, no generator, nothing but pigeons and rust. But that night, it was lit. The swimmer next to me leaned forward. "Is that—" "I see it," I said. We cut the engines to idle. Let the waves take us in slow. I called to the crew, "Keep your eyes open for debris or sails." A few minutes later, we saw it. A hull, scratched, leaning, the name Maribel barely visible on the side. Stern was cracked, no mast, and nobody aboard. That's when my stomach really dropped. I ordered a shoreline sweep. We launched the small tender, hit the southern ridge, found a few supplies washed up, life jackets, a broken cooler, a shoe. Then one of the crew shouted, "Footprints!" Wet ones, leading up the rocks, heading inland. We followed. Didn't speak much. You don't need to when your chest's already tight. We followed those footprints without saying a word. They weren't old, still wet. You could see the weight of them in the mud, deep and staggered, like whoever made them was dragging themselves forward. 4 sets, maybe 5. I couldn't tell in the dark, not exactly. We had our handhelds out, scanning what little light we could. The wind was still screaming, loud enough to make your eyes water, and the rain kept shifting from sideways mist to full slaps in the face. You don't feel it right away, not with the adrenaline. But later, when the cold sets in, it hits your bones like a hammer. Climbing up the side of Penumbra Island ain't something I recommend even in daylight. It's all jagged rock and loose soil, no trail, nothing but gulls and sea stink. The whole place smells like wet iron and rot. We made it up about 30, maybe 40 feet when we saw them. just standing there, 4 of them, huddled near the base of the lighthouse, clothes ripped, one guy barefoot. One of the women had her arm tucked into her jacket like it was broken. Their faces looked blank, not panicked, not crying, just hollow, like they'd already burned through all their fear and were waiting for something else to happen. I shouted first, just to make sure they weren't hurt bad. "Coast Guard, you're safe now. Sit down, we'll check you." They didn't move at first. Then one of them, tall, younger guy, early 30s maybe, he just kind of turned toward me and said, "He showed us the way. That's all. Not thank you, not help. Just that. He showed us the way." I knelt beside him, checked his pupils, his hands, his pulse. He was in shock, but lucid. No major injuries. The woman next to him had a busted wrist. Yeah, but they were all alive, somehow. I asked if they'd sent a distress call. He shook his head. "Nothing worked," he said. "All the systems failed, even the flares. We thought we were going to drown." I asked how they made it to shore. He just nodded toward the lighthouse. We saw the light. He waved us in. I looked at the tower. Dark now, quiet, no noise, no rotation, no light. I stood up and walked around it, just to make sure. It hadn't been touched. The door at the base was still rusted shut, windows broken, no generator cables, no signs of life. The light, whatever they saw, wasn't there anymore. One of my crew radioed me from the ridge. "Ma'am, you're not going to believe this, but our backup radar's offline. Same with nav. Just went dark." I didn't answer him. I just kept looking at that damn tower. The survivors were stable, cold, and disoriented, but alive. That should have been all that mattered. I kept telling myself that as we loaded them into the tender. But something was off. Not just the silence in them, not just the footprints leading up the hill, but not back down. It was how they kept looking behind them, not at the water, at the lighthouse, like it owed them something. We brought them aboard, wrapped them in blankets, got the woman's arm in a sling. They didn't ask questions, didn't beg for heat or food or anything. They just kept repeating the same lines. We followed the light. He waved us in. He was tall, beard, old uniform. They didn't even know each other's names at that point, but they all saw the same man. After we got them stabilized, I went back up with the rescue swimmer to double-check the tower. I couldn't leave it like that, not with what they'd said. We circled it, shined lights through the busted windows. Nothing, no movement, just stone, salt, and rusted metal. But then, at the top, on the north-facing window, something caught my eye. It was open, slightly, not shattered, not cracked, open, swung out like someone had just looked down from there. I made my way back down, and there, right where the path started, were the same wet footprints, going up, only up, no return trail. I didn't say anything to the crew. What was I going to say? That the ghost of a lighthouse keeper had flagged down a bunch of castaways? That a building with no power lit itself up just long enough to save 4 people? You don't say that kind of thing in uniform. You file your report, you write unknown atmospheric interference, and you move on. But I didn't move on. Not really. The next day, I ran the names of every keeper who'd ever worked Castor Bluff. Took some digging. Most of the old records were paper, buried in Boston archives. But I found him. Walter Greaves, last assigned keeper, disappeared 1982, declared missing, presumed drowned, no body ever recovered. Standard stuff for that era. No scandal, no known reason, just vanished. I showed the photo to the survivors later, months later. They came by the station during a debrief. Eric, the marine biologist, looked at it and said one word. "That's him." I didn't ask how he was sure. I could see it on his face, same uniform, same beard, same build, same ghost, I guess. People still ask me what happened out there. I tell them the truth, but not all of it, because some of it ain't mine to explain. All I know is We didn't find those people. They were already found, by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. After we got him off the island, we took him straight to Bar Harbor, closest place with proper medical. The storm was still coming in hard, so we didn't hang around. Didn't even talk much on the way back. Everyone on board. We were quiet. The kind of quiet where your thoughts get loud. The survivors were beat to hell. One had early signs of hypothermia. Another had a cracked rib, probably from the landing. But all things considered, they were damn lucky to be alive. Hell, it didn't feel like luck. It felt like something else, like they'd been delivered. While the docs checked them out, I did the paperwork, or tried to. But it didn't add up. No distress call, no GPS ping, no EPIRB signal. That's the emergency beacon every boat's supposed to have. Even if you don't hit a button, it kicks on when it hits water. Nothing from Maribel. It was like she just vanished off the map, and then showed up on a rock no one sails near. I pulled up the weather logs, radar data, checked it all. That interference I saw on the scope lasted exactly 18 minutes, not before, not after, just that window. Same amount of time the survivors say they walk toward the light. 18 damn minutes. I didn't say that to anyone. Not yet. Later that night, I went back to check on the four. One of them, Eric Simmons, the biologist, was sitting up in bed, drinking bad hospital coffee. Looked more alive than earlier, but still rattled. I asked him again what he saw. Not to interrogate, just to hear it straight, no adrenaline in the way. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "We were out there for hours. Everything failed. Power, GPS, comms, gone. We were just drifting in the dark. Then the wind hit us from the side, and we heard something, like a horn, but real faint. Then this light started flashing, not white, kinda yellow, old style, rotating, like the old lighthouses used to do." I didn't say anything. He kept going. We figured it was land, so we paddled in with whatever we had. Thought maybe there was still someone operating a station. But when we got close, the boat cracked against something. We couldn't steer. We jumped, swam. Somehow all of us made it to shore. That part I already knew. But then he said the thing that stuck with me. When we got on the rocks, we didn't know where to go. Everything was black again. Then, this guy appeared at the top of the cliff, just standing there. Looked like an old military guy. Tall, white beard, long coat. He didn't talk, just pointed toward the hill. I asked him, "You sure he was real?" He nodded. I wasn't hallucinating. None of us were. We all saw him. I thought maybe he was Coast Guard, an old uniform, but not like yours. Older. That hit me. Later that week, after things calmed down, I went digging through base archives. I needed to know who had last operated Castor Bluff Lighthouse. It was bugging me. I found his name, Walter Greaves, retired chief lightkeeper, went missing in '82, vanished from that same island. His last logbook entry just said, "Storm rising." No one found a body. I tracked down an old personnel file, yellowed with time, photo paper curling at the edges. The second I saw it, my stomach turned. It was him. Same build, same beard, same goddamn uniform Eric described. I printed a copy, showed it to Eric during a follow-up interview, weeks later. He didn't even blink. "That's the man," he said. "That's the one who waved us up." I still remember just standing there, staring at the photo. My mouth felt dry, my hands cold, not scared, just rattled. You work in this job long enough, you think you've seen it all. But I hadn't. I wanted to believe there was some rational explanation. Maybe an old drifter living in the ruins. Maybe a reclusive vet who wore vintage gear and happened to show up during a storm. But there were no footprints leaving that tower. Only climbing up, and no sign anyone had opened the damn thing in decades. We went back the following week with a small crew. No weather this time. Clear skies, calm seas, just routine follow-up. We brought thermal imagers, drones, did a full perimeter sweep. Nothing. No heat signatures, no signs of recent human activity. Except for one thing. At the top of the lighthouse, the same north-facing window was still open. Rusted hinges, but open clean, like someone had swung it out. And inside, on the stairwell wall, a handprint. Faint, smudged, damp. We couldn't trace it to anyone. That didn't make the report. Command reviewed everything, said it was a system anomaly. They blamed the radar flicker on electromagnetic interference from the storm. Blamed the survivor's story on stress and exposure. I didn't argue. What would be the point? But between you and me, that wasn't interference. That was a man. Or something like one. And those 4 people? They were dead to rights. No comms, no power, no flares, no visibility. If that light hadn't shown up, we never would have known they were there. We didn't find them. They were already being led to shore. By someone who knew that island better than anyone alive. Someone who disappeared before those kids were even born. So, yeah. You can call it a ghost story if you want. Me? I just call it the one time in my career I saw something I couldn't file away, couldn't wrap in a report, couldn't explain with a chart or a log. Something bigger than me stepped in that night, and I'll never forget it. I wish I could tell you I packed it away like the rest, boxed it up, labeled it weird shit, and moved on. But that one stayed with me. The first week after it happened, I kept trying to treat it like any other case. Debrief, file the forms, log the hours, follow up with the survivors. You do the routine, and the routine protects you. That's how it's always been. The rhythm keeps the ghosts out. Didn't work this time. The thing that kept circling in my head wasn't the light, wasn't even the old man on the cliff. It was how calm they were. The 4 we pulled off that rock, they should have been hysterical, shaking, crying, maybe one of them puking in a bag, another screaming into a blanket. I've seen people come out of better situations looking wrecked. But these 4? Quiet. Like they'd seen something they didn't know how to talk about. Like they'd been through something sacred. That's the word that keeps coming to mind, even if I hate using it. Sacred. Not magical, not spiritual, not like church, but untouchable. Like it didn't belong in the world we walk around in. I went back to my regular duties after that. Finished my last month, did the damn paperwork, helped train the next class of officers. Then I signed out, turned in my badge, cleaned out my locker. They gave me a plaque, took a photo. I smiled, I shook hands, and I never once mentioned Penumbra. Because I knew what would happen. Folks would nod, smile politely, and never look me the same way again. They'd chalk it up to burnout. A tired officer seeing shapes in the fog after too many years. That's the quiet code in our line of work. Keep it normal or keep it to yourself. So I did, for a while. After I retired, I moved out of Gloucester, still in state, but far enough inland that I couldn't hear the gulls anymore. I figured the silence would help. It didn't. I kept thinking about the radar logs, about how the interference started and stopped like clockwork, how it only blanked out the exact area where that boat went missing. I checked other storm logs for weeks. Nothing similar, no pattern. Just that one night. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes, sweating, hearing waves in my ears. But not the crash and roar kind, not the kind that pull you under. This was something softer, a foghorn, one I'd never heard before. Maybe it was just my brain replaying things. I've heard enough bells and horns over the years to make an orchestra, but this one didn't match anything I recognized. Lower, slower. I started asking around, off the record. Old Coast Guard guys I trusted. Quiet conversations over coffee or beer. I'd ask, "You ever see anything near Penumbra?" Most said no. A few said they didn't go near it. But one guy, retired warrant officer named Danner, looked at me and just said, "You saw the light?" That's all. We didn't talk more than 5 minutes, but I knew he'd seen something too. We didn't need to compare notes. That's how this stuff works. You either get it or you don't. I still keep the photo, the one of Walter Greaves, tucked in an old manila folder, bottom drawer of a file cabinet I never open unless I'm drinking. Every now and then I take it out. Look at that face, that beard. The eyes that seem to stare just left of the camera, like he was already looking at something else. And I ask myself the same question every damn time. Why? Why them? Why that night? Why him? I don't believe in fairy tales, never did. I believe in currents, tide maps, barometric pressure, in metal and rope and rust. But I also know what I saw. I know what they saw, and I know what I felt standing on that island, like someone was still watching, not to scare us, not to mess with us, but to guide. That's the part that keeps me up sometimes. The idea that someone, or something, that disappeared 37 years ago still knew his job, still kept the light, even when no one else was looking. After all this time, I think that's what rattled me the most. Not the mystery, the duty. That man, if that's what he still is, didn't leave his post. Storm came, boat in trouble. Light went on, just like it always had. He didn't need electricity, didn't need orders. He just did what he was supposed to do, and that kind of loyalty, I don't know, it hit something deep in me, because I spent my whole life trying to be that kind of steady, that kind of reliable. You don't clock in for a paycheck in the Coast Guard, you do it because it means something. And sometimes you wonder if it was worth it. The cold, the calls that came too late, the names you never forget, the ones you couldn't save. But then something like this happens. Something you can't explain, and it don't care if your rank is high or if your name's in a folder somewhere. It just reminds you. Some jobs never stop. Even when the world thinks they're done. Even when the tower's dark and the logs are closed and the waves keep eating the coast year after year. Somebody's still up there, watching, just in case. It's been a few years now. The sea's not in my ears anymore. I don't wake up to the smell of diesel or salt. I don't keep a rescue bag by the door. These days, I spend more time worrying about my knees than coordinates. But that night, it's still with me. It sneaks up in small ways, like when I'm doing groceries and the wind hits just right through the parking lot, sharp, damp, with that northern bite. Or when I pass an old guy on the street wearing a navy peacoat and for a second, just one stupid second, I see that damn beard. That same tired posture, that old shape of someone who's seen more than he says. Sometimes I think maybe I'm just holding on to it because it was near the end of my time. Last month in uniform. Maybe my brain just wanted to stamp something memorable on it all, make the whole career feel like it meant something. But that doesn't explain what I saw. It doesn't explain the survivors, or the window being open, or the footprints. I've run that memory through every possible filter in my head. I've tried logic. I've tried denial. Hell, I even tried writing it down once, just to get it out of me. Couldn't finish. My hands started shaking. Not fear, just something heavier, like I was writing about someone else's death and didn't know how to make it respectful. I haven't told my family the full story. My sister thinks I burned out toward the end, and maybe she's not wrong. My nephew asked me once if I ever saw anything weird out there. I said, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." He laughed. I didn't. I don't talk about it because I don't want to explain it. I don't want to defend it. I don't want to watch someone roll their eyes or try to reason it away. Some things you just carry. They sit in the back of your mind like a duffel bag you never unpack. This is one of them. And here's the thing. I don't think it's a ghost story. I don't think Walter Greaves is out there floating around like some fog-drenched spirit. I think he never left. I mean that literally. I think the man died on that island, and something, call it habit, call it duty, call it soul, just kept going. I've thought about that a lot. How people like us, rescuers, responders, folks who run toward the trouble instead of away from it, We don't really know how to stop. Retirement is just a word. We don't flip a switch. We just slow down until something else takes over. Maybe that's what happened to him. Storm came, boat in trouble. So he did what he always did. He turned on the light. That idea, it doesn't scare me. It comforts me, in a way. Because if something of us sticks around after we're gone, I'd like it to be the part that helps. Not the pain, not the regrets, but the service. The part that points the way when somebody's about to drown. That's what he did. That's what I saw. I keep thinking about how nobody else was watching that stretch of water. No radar was pinging. No towers were manned. Every piece of tech we rely on was blind. But something saw them. And it wasn't me. I got there late. Truth is, by the time we showed up, the saving was already done. You don't admit that out loud in this line of work. You're supposed to be the last line of defense. The calm voice in the storm. But that night, I was just the pickup team. The real rescue? That happened before we even launched. I've spent a career seeing the worst the ocean can do, and let me tell you, water doesn't care. It doesn't care how good a sailor you are, how strong your engine is, how many hours you logged. If the sea wants you, it takes you. Quick or slow, it don't matter. But those four? The sea didn't get them. Because someone was still up there on that cliff, pointing the way. Every now and then, when it's late and I'm feeling too restless to sleep, I pull out the old lighthouse logs I managed to copy before retiring. Walter Greaves had neat handwriting. Real careful. All caps. Very proper. The last entry? Storm rising. Might be the big one. Then nothing. That man died doing his job. And maybe he's still doing it. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say here. That some callings don't end. They just keep going, whether the world believes in them or not. It makes me wonder about my own time. When I go, what'll be left? Probably not much. A few reports, some commendations, a plaque collecting dust in a Boston hallway. But maybe, just maybe, something deeper sticks around. A gut instinct, a steady hand, a light, somewhere in the fog, that still knows where home is. I don't talk much about this story. Most people wouldn't get it. But if you've ever stood on a deck with nothing but black water in every direction, if you've ever had that moment where you thought, this might be it, and then somehow something broke through, the radio, the light, the wave that didn't hit you, then maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you've felt it too. You get older, and the things you thought you'd forget, turns out they're the ones that stay. I've been out of the service a few years now. Don't wear the uniform. Don't check the radio. Don't carry the weight the same way I used to. But that night on Penumbra Island? Still there, like it happened last week. And I don't tell this story to just anybody. Hell, I didn't talk about it for a long time. Most folks wouldn't believe it. Some would laugh. Others would nod real slow, like I'd just cracked under pressure. But I know what I saw. And I know those people were alive when they shouldn't have been. That's enough for me. You spend your life in the Coast Guard. You see a lot of endings. Boats that didn't make it back. Kids that went under before we got there. Cold faces. Long reports. But this one? This one had no business ending the way it did. And maybe that's why I needed to say it out loud, at least once. Put it out there for whoever needs to hear it. Because I think there's more of us out there. People who've seen something they can't explain but never felt safe enough to share it. Folks who carry memories they can't file under normal. If that's you, you're not alone. Maybe you were driving a route you've done 100 times and something made you stop, turn around, and because of that, someone was saved. Maybe you sat with a dying man and he looked past you and smiled like someone else was in the room. Maybe you were standing on a dock, looking out at nothing, and felt, really felt, like someone was watching. Not in a scary way, in a steady way, in a way that told you to hold on just a little longer. I'm not saying what happened to me was supernatural. I don't have the language for that. I'm just saying it wasn't normal. And maybe that's okay. Not everything has to be explainable to be real. Sometimes a thing happens and it doesn't fit the box, doesn't follow the chain of command, doesn't obey the rules of time or logic or technology, but it happens just the same, and you feel it down to your core. I used to think experience meant having all the answers, that if you did something long enough, rescued enough people, studied enough maps, read enough instruments, you'd understand how the world works. Now I think experience is knowing when to shut up and listen. Knowing when to admit, I don't know what the hell that was, but I know it mattered. That's what this story is to me. It mattered. Even if it doesn't make sense. Even if nobody ever files it in a report or logs it in some government database. 4 lives were saved. And not by me. Not really. By something older than me. Older than all of us. Something that remembered its job long after the rest of the world forgot. That lighthouse. It wasn't supposed to shine. But it did. Just long enough. And if you've ever had a moment like that, something that pulled you back when everything was going wrong, then you know. You know what I'm talking about. You don't need me to convince you. You've felt it too. So if you're watching this, and you've got a story like that, something you've never told because you figured no one would believe it, tell it, write it down, say it out loud, share it with someone. Not because you need to prove anything, but because maybe, somewhere out there, someone else is still lost in the dark, and your story is the light that points the way. That's it. That's all I got. Thanks for listening. Be safe out there. And if you ever see a light where there shouldn't be one, don't ignore it. It might be someone doing their job. One last time.